I'm sick of you whiners not understanding what it means to be a martial artist. And I'm going to truly put it in perspective for you, you know. Over time, there became something known as infantry, right? And well, you know, not obviously infantry, but, you know, heavy infantry, okay? So white people became bigger, you know, but they weren't more effective in martial arts. See, as soon as you rely on technology, it's no longer martial arts. You're getting behind a tank, which is, you know, you follow that train of thought till it's finished, it's a fucking tank, right? And obviously you're not using martial arts anymore, you're relying on technology. So as they moved away from martial arts in its pure form and moved toward, you know, swordsmanship, you know, fencing and sword play, and then eventually the gunplay, obviously, you know, and they had big heavy shields and big swords and knights and the crusaders and heavy armor, you know, then and big old axemen, you know, we started shifting away from the combat arts in its pure form, and it started being some sort of technological evolution of combat, okay? And so if you remove the armor and you go back to the pure form of martial arts and you look at how you can apply it today, which is self-defense, and how you show who's the best is sparring, okay? What did you have is you have people who were shaped like I am. Period. Period. This is not up for debate. This is known. It's out there. Okay? They were shaped like I am. So in the case of the slaves, you had a lot of people doing manual labor, hard labor, and you had some slaves who started getting big and strong for the purpose of sports competition. Okay? They would do headbutt battles, they would do wrestling matches, they would do certain martial arts competitions. And so they started getting bigger, and it started becoming more of, you know, they started having words for it. You know, there's like Spanish words for it. I don't know what they are from the top of my head. They have these special words for it, you know. Just like in capoeira, when you have their little matches where they don't make any contact with each other and they're just showing off moves, they have certain words for it. But even if you look at the capoeiristas, are these big, heavy, strong guys? No. These guys are built like I am. You know? And a lot of them are shorter than I am. And they're doing these flips and this stuff like this and so on and so forth. Why? Because when you go back to the start, you had a bunch of weapons. You had clubs. You had cutlasses and short swords and machetes. You had spears. You had axes. You had hatchets. You had knives that had different directions to them. So when you stab, you could also stab down, stab to the side, you could stab out like this, with this thing pointed this way, this pointed this way. That's one of the Igbo knives. My tribe had a knife with multi-directions. So when I'm fast like that, and you know my tribe used to use this multi-directional knife, put it in your mind. What would this guy be back then? He would be one deadly motherfucker when everything was like that, when martial arts was in its true form. So who is the true champion of martial arts? Is it the evolution of technology? Is it sports competition? Or is it combat arts in its pure form? Self-defense and sparring, the ancient way to show your martial arts. Even the capoeiristas, who arguably have the least contact form of sparring, no contact form of sparring. Arguably it's sparring, you know, the word has slipped my mind, but you know, there's a certain thing when they go in a circle. And even the circle, I mean, when you look at everything about capoeira, it screams Africa. Okay, the circle had to do with the religion, had to do with the circular motion and how they believed in their kicks and arcs and, you know, and so on and so forth. Their inverted kicks and so on. It goes back to the religion of the culture. And even when you look at Egypt, what was, you know, I talked about this many times, talking about this for 4 or 5 years at least, where the war arts were merged. Egypt, you had the astrology, the mythology, the religion, you had the science, and you had the war arts in temples. Because every god had an animal, just like you see the animal styles of Kung Fu. You had Sobek. How does a crocodile fight? How can we learn from that and apply it to fighting? You had Horus, you had Mantu, the war god, the war arts. Mantu was pretty much an earlier deity who would be replaced. Okay, and then later on, of course, you had Sekhmet and so on and so forth. And how did these different deities or animals fight? And so they made them half animal, half human. There's different reasons for that. There's a scientific reason for that, and I don't have time to explain that. There is a spiritual reason for that. There is also a military reason for that. And so they had weapons. They had the wasp scepter, the crook and flail, the staff, the wasp scepter, the staff, the magic staff, if you will. People don't understand these things. They just don't. They don't understand how these people would go into battle feeling empowered by the gods. They don't understand how religion and martial arts were together, and how Egypt's glory wasn't just military victory and financial, it was spiritual victory over the opponents. And the opponents couldn't beat them with a spiritual force. They had to resort to materialism. They had to resort to trickery. This is why the Europeans and the Middle Eastern people, they started favoring trickery, while Africans favored spirituality. And they started favoring materialism, while Africans only looked at things through a kind of spiritual point of view. The Egyptians, for example, they based their whole life on preparing for their death. You didn't just say a few prayers right before you die. Your whole life was in preparation for your death. One of the biggest expenses you had was your funeral expenses, the funeral rites, the scrolls on the papyri, and the different forms that these scrolls took place. And you have a priest-like person, the priesthood, if you, depending on how much you could afford, reading your funerary rites so you could successfully journey to the other side, selling you magic spells, because your whole life was stacking money, and preparing for your death. Stacking money so you could afford your burial onto the other side. It was about the afterlife. Why these cowardly, sniveling, caucasoid dogs would throw, self-indulge their whole life, And so it was these white people who came up with this idea that, spend it while you still got it, because dead men can't, spend no money or something like that. That's a European philosophy. The African way is you prepare for your death your entire life. Your life doesn't matter. It's temporary. Your death in the spiritual world. This is some kind of, sandbox where, you have a break and you go out and play. Then it's time to go back to the spiritual world, to the education. It's time to go back to work. It's time to go back to what really matters. All this dicking around on earth is temporary. Is your life about that sandbox, or is it about the rest of your life? And your life should be about the afterlife for the same reason. And so these lowly dogs who have treated me unfairly, and the Jews who were there, they're basically, a mix between the Mongols and white people and nomadic people. They moved around. They started picking up on game. And even if you don't want to see it that way, you think they're really Jews, there came a point when they were traveling around everywhere, Egypt and Europe, and being expelled for trickery and so on and so forth. They're starting to cultivate the ability to deceive people and trick people and to understand how the financial systems work and manipulate them, and they were getting kicked out because they were so good at it. People weren't stupid. They say, well, we're doing good, and all of a sudden these Jews move into town, they have all the money, and we're doing bad. It didn't take them figuring out exactly how they did it. They probably didn't figure out exactly how they did it most of the time. Maybe they did. I don't fucking know. Some cases they did, some cases they didn't. It's a long story. And, was I there? No. Is there history about it? Yes. Is there Jewish virtual library and other sources which may or may not be reliable? Yes. But bottom line is all these sneaky scumbags who went around spying on people and learning how things work and learning how to manipulate them, who had a philosophy for the here and now, were the scum who ended up taking the upper hand. Not because they were smarter, because their philosophy was to hoard. It was materialism. Okay, when you're a bunch of materialistic dogs and you base the financial system not on a spiritual hierarchy of men, not on a spiritual pecking order, but on materialism, so where a bunch of spiritual bottom feeders take charge. The result of that is, of course, you're going to take the upper hand. These people are preparing for their death. They're not spending their money tricking other people and hoarding money and this and that. They're preparing for their death. There's a scales they got to face. So what did they do? The materialistic dogs altered religions to fit their materialistic lifestyles so that they could still cheat and manipulate and do underhanded techniques to gain the upper hand. The underhand to gain the upper hand because they're a bunch of hermetic trickster men. Hermetic trickster man using the underhand to gain the upper hand. If you see what I'm saying. So, then these dogs turn around and act like they're some kind of superior being, the more civilized being, when the highest form of civility is spirituality, which they are the bottom feeders of. Why? I just explained it. Because they use the underhand to gain the upper hand, not the higher self of man. Because they're scum. And they're still up to their fucking dirty tricks. You know, their actions. They say after all these years, the white man is still a shallow, materialistic dog. And is he striving to be better? No. He's trying to bring us all down with him. It's a scumbag. It's a drug-pushing, sniveling dog. You know? Drugs used to be, even if you look at drugs and alcohol, these things were used for pretty noble means before the white man got his hands on them. You know, people were doing drugs to elevate themselves and try to connect with the gods. Now they're just a bunch of drug fucking pushing trash, just doped out on the street, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because the underhanded scum got the upper hand and they started giving you some of their philosophy and some of their drugs. And so now you're all a bunch of drugged up fools. Prescription drugs, aspirin, and so on and so forth. I see this one good white guy in a video where he said that, you know, it's like a car with your lights going on. When you have a headache, it's like the light has gone on, right? The oil light goes on. Do you know, replace the oil? Do you have an oil change? Do you fill up the oil? Or do you unplug the bulb? And that's what the white man is. He's giving you a bunch of drugs and mental health, and he's doing things. He's not addressing the root cause of the problem. Because he never meant to address the root cause of the problem. Because in addressing the root cause of the problem, you address him. Let me say this again, because I don't think you understand what I'm saying. To address the root cause of the problems in society means you address a bunch of Jews, whites, and secret society dogs. That's what it means to address the root cause. So of course, these sniveling, manipulative, fucking illegitimate, devious fucking trash bags are gonna fucking do everything that these vile, sewage drinking, fucking lowly serpents can in order to keep you from addressing the root cause. So then they have to come up with something else. And why they come up with something else, they're going to profit with the solution that they give you. The ball is in their court. They have the think tanks, they have the Ivy League schools, they have all the people who are considered experts. So people look to the experts to give them a solution. The ball is in their court. In their side of the court. It's their move. And what do? They say, well, I'm going to give you a solution that keeps us getting rich and keeps us in power. And that's what Big Pharma does. And it's so funny to me. No, it's not funny. It's so sickly ironic how one of the major people exposing this underhanded culture, this clandestine society structure, this surreptitious secret fucking government, okay, are one of the main people exposing it are, RT. RT talks about these things, It says, well, there's a bunch of fucking lowly dogs, and they have these pharmaceutical, and they're white people, So you got the white people from the Western Europe doing one thing, and the white people from Eastern Europe going, that's them. And they're doing everything they can to clear their... See, what they're doing is smart, okay? They're probably in secret societies. In fact, I'm pretty damn sure they are. Everything shows that they are. But they're smart enough to say, hey, at least I can make my ethnic group look good. It's the Western Europeans who are really fucking morons. The Eastern Europeans are a whole lot smarter than they are, and I'm not surprised. Chess and a lot of things would, lead you to believe that. And I'm almost out of time. But basically, to make a long story short, the Russians and the Ukrainians and them are smart enough to fucking expose the devils so that they can go down in history as not so bad, and the Western Europeans go down in history as the scum they are. I'm out of time.